All right, let's talk about goals. We all have them, we all make lists, but today we're going to completely reframe that whole process. We're not just making a list, we're talking about a profound act of self-design. Think of it as the architecture of your own achievement.
So let me ask you this. What if your goals weren't just a random to-do list? What if they were more like a detailed architectural blueprint for the life you actually want to build? I mean, really build. That's the core idea we're going to dig into, and it's all based on this really powerful concept called intellectual agency.
Okay, so if we're architects, where do we start? Well, you start with the foundation, right? So that's our first section, freedom as design.
And that foundation is built on something the source material calls intellectual agency. Now, just look at this definition here. It's the ability to direct your own actions based on standards you've defined for yourself. It's not about what someone else tells you to do. This is the real signature of your independence. It's you taking the reins.
Which leads right into this next idea. Goals are so much more than just a checklist. They are commitments you write for yourself. Think about that. They're the framework, the scaffolding that organizes your thoughts, your focus, your energy. In a very real way, they give structure to your consciousness. I mean, check out this quote. This just nails it. The architecture of the will projected into time. Wow, that's powerful, isn't it? It's saying that when you set a really meaningful goal, you're not just planning, you are literally creating. It's this forward-looking act of building who you want to become.
Okay, so we've got our foundation laid, but a blueprint doesn't build itself. Every great project needs a power source to get off the ground, right? So let's talk about that in our next section, the motivational spark.
So what exactly is the fuel for this blueprint of yours? Well, the source breaks it down into three really important parts. First up is vision. You gotta have that big imaginative picture of the future you want. Then you need ambition. That's the engine, right? The psychological push against your own limitations. And finally, and this is crucial, you need justification, the deep, rational, and even moral reason why you're doing this in the first place. And a huge part of that justification comes from understanding the difference between your needs and your wants. You see, needs, they're about survival, your foundation. It's the foundation of being. But wants, that's about aspiration, about who you want to become. It's the architecture of becoming. And look, the goal here isn't to pick one over the other. The real magic happens when you integrate them both into one solid plan. And this whole idea of a why brings us to this incredible quote. You've probably heard it. The why is everything. It's the root of your whole system. When you have a why that's so strong, so clear, then how to get there with all the struggles and sacrifices, well, it's not just something you can put up with. It actually becomes meaningful.
So we've got the foundation, we've got the fuel. Now it's time to get down to business and actually draw up the plans. Let's get into the nitty-gritty with the architect's blueprint.
Every good blueprint needs structure, and this three-level hierarchy is just so effective. Think of it like a pyramid. At the very top, you have the strategic level. That's your big why, your ultimate mission. Then in the middle, you have the tactical. This is the what, the big milestones you need to achieve. And down at the bottom, the foundation of it all, is the operational. That's the day-to-day how, the actual things you do. The beauty of this is that every tiny action at the bottom connects all the way up to your grand vision at the top. And to make that blueprint really solid, you need these four things. First, clarity. You have to be super precise about what you want, because any fuzziness just kills motivation. Next, direction. This turns a vague desire into an actual path you can follow. Then comes planning. I love this phrase from the source, the cognitive choreography of your pursuit. It's about thinking through the steps. And finally, quantification. You have to be able to measure it. This is how you turn wishy-washy hopes into real metrics you can track. All right, but let's be honest. A blueprint is just paper until you actually start building. So our last section is all about that dynamic process of doing, checking your work, and making changes on the fly. It's about building and rebuilding. And this is it, execution. This is where the rubber really meets the road. It's that moment when all your ideas, all your plans become actual coordinated action in the real world. Honestly, execution is the ultimate stress test for your entire blueprint. So how do you keep going when it gets tough, especially on a long project? Well, this chart breaks it down perfectly. The biggest chunk, you see, is focus. just that raw, sustained discipline to keep your attention where it needs to be. Then you've got milestones. These are your checkpoints along the way, giving you feedback and a little boost. And finally, you have benchmarks. Those are the outside standards you use to make sure the work you're doing is actually high quality. And what's the result of all this? The source has a great word for it: yield. And this is so cool. It's not just about getting the thing you wanted. It's about that specific moment where your idea in your head and reality finally line up. The yield is the ultimate proof that you can take something that was just a possibility and make it real. But, what happens when you're halfway through building and you realize, maybe the plan is wrong? There's a brilliant tool for this called zero-based thinking. It comes down to asking yourself this one brutally honest question. Knowing what I know now, would I still start this today? Asking this protects you from that feeling of, well, I've already come this far. It makes sure your goals are right for who you are today, not who you were when you began.
And that's precisely why changing your plan isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of strength. It's how you stay resilient instead of rigid. You're not abandoning your goal. You're just finding a smarter way to get there. It's basically intellectual humility in action.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to the main idea of this whole thing. This quote just sums it up perfectly. The whole process, setting your own goals, building your own plan, and having the wisdom to adapt it, all of that is practicing your freedom as an act of design.
So you see, this was never really about just making a better to-do list. It's about a much bigger shift in perspective. It's about seeing yourself as the architect of your own life, your own meaning. Which leaves us with just one final, very important question for you to think about. What will you build?